Quinn Foster had just dropped his son's worn-out backpack into the back seat of his rusted-out sedan when he heard the crying. Not his son Toby was already buckled in and munching on the last granola bar they had in the house. No, this was a different kind of cry. Younger. Lost. Quinn turned, immediately scanning the crowded parking lot outside the downtown library. His first instinct, as always lately, was worry. He couldn't afford trouble, not when he was already behind on rent and barely scraping enough to keep the lights on. But then he saw him. A little boy, maybe 4, standing by the bike rack with tears streaming down his cheeks. No parent in sight, Quinn didn't hesitate. He crouched down, careful not to startle the kid. "Hey, buddy," he said gently. "You okay? Where's your mom?" The boy's lower lip wobbled. "I dunno. She was on the phone and then I saw a puppy and I chased it and now I can't find her." Quinn exhaled slowly. His own son, Toby, unbuckled himself and slid out of the car, walking up beside him. "Dad, is he lost?" The boy nodded hard. "I'm Tyler." Quinn gave him a warm smile. "Hey, Tyler. I'm Quinn and this is my son, Toby. We're gonna help you find her, okay? I promise." Tyler sniffled. "Okay." Quinn stood up, scanning the area again. No panicked woman running around, no parent in sight. He reached for Tyler's hand and looked down at both boys. "All right, Toby, hop in. Tyler, you too. Let's drive around a bit and see if we spot her. You remember what she was wearing?" Tyler wiped his nose with his sleeve. "She had a white jacket and shiny shoes." "Shiny shoes," Quinn repeated with a half smile. "We'll find her." They drove slowly through the surrounding blocks, Tyler perched in the back between empty fast food wrappers and a booster seat that had seen better days. Quinn's eyes scanned every sidewalk, every doorway. "Dad," Toby asked quietly. "Do you think his mom's scared?" He glanced at his son in the rearview mirror. "Yeah, buddy, I bet she is." They were just about to circle back to the library when Tyler suddenly gasped and pointed at the sidewalk near the corner cafe. "There, that's her." "That's Mommy." Quinn pulled over fast, barely throwing the car in park before Tyler had scrambled out. A tall woman in heels and a white coat turned around at the sound of her son's voice. She dropped her phone. "Tyler," she cried, rushing over and scooping him into her arms. She held him so tightly Quinn thought she might never let go. Quinn stepped out of the car, giving them space. "I'm so sorry," the woman said breathlessly, eyes wide as she looked up at him. "He just disappeared. I turned around and he was gone." "He's okay," Quinn said quickly. "He was near the library, said he saw a puppy." "That sounds like him," she said with a nervous laugh, pushing a strand of her sleek dark hair behind her ear. She looked completely out of place next to his beat-up car and oil-stained hoodie. She held Tyler tighter. "Thank you." "I don't even know your name, Quinn," he said, offering his hand. "Quinn Foster, this is my son Toby." Her eyes softened immediately. "You have a son too, full-time," Quinn said, and there was a heaviness in those words he didn't try to hide. She took his hand. "I'm Palmer Tate." Quinn blinked. The name sounded vaguely familiar. He must have seen it on a billboard or magazine somewhere. She looked like she belonged in a fancy office, not on a sidewalk with a tear-streaked toddler. "Nice to meet you, Palmer. Can I do something to thank you?" she asked, still clearly shaken. "Buy you lunch, dinner, whatever you want." He shook his head. "You don't have to. No, I want to, please. You brought my son back to me." Toby looked up at her. "Is that a real diamond on your ear?" Quinn nearly choked. "Toby, don't." Palmer laughed, a full, genuine laugh that reached her eyes. "Yes, and I think I owe you both a burger. No arguments." Quinn hesitated. It had been a long time since someone had offered him anything without expecting something in return. "All right," he said. "But only if I get to pay for the next one." She smiled. "Deal." They ended up at a family diner a few blocks away. Palmer ordered milkshakes for the boys and coffee for herself. Quinn stuck with water, though she noticed the way he glanced at the menu prices before ordering the cheapest thing he could find. She didn't say anything. Instead, she asked about Toby's school, and Quinn asked Tyler if he liked dinosaurs. The conversation flowed easily, like they weren't from two completely different worlds. Halfway through lunch, Palmer excused herself to take a call. She stepped outside, and Quinn watched through the window as her posture straightened, her voice tight and commanding. He couldn't hear what she was saying, but it was clear this woman wasn't just wearing expensive clothes. She was someone important. He turned back to Toby, who was busy teaching Tyler how to use extra ketchup as lava in their French fry volcano. When Palmer came back, her expression was softer again. "Sorry about that." "No worries," Quinn said. "You run a business or something," she paused. "Yeah. Something like that." He didn't press, and she didn't offer. They walked out together after lunch, the kids still laughing. She handed him a sleek business card. "Just in case," she said. "If you ever need anything." He glanced at the card. Palmer Tate, CEO Tate & Co. Group. His eyebrows lifted. "You're a CEO," she smiled. "You didn't realize," he laughed under his breath. "Not exactly running in those circles lately. You helped my son. That's the only circle I care about today." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. "I meant it," she said quietly. "If you ever need anything, or if you ever want that second burger." He looked down at her card, then back at her. "I might take you up on that." Palmer glanced at her son, then at his. "Maybe next time, just us." Quinn felt something shift in his chest. It had been a while since anyone looked at him like that, like he wasn't just surviving. "Yeah," he said. "I'd like that." As she got into her sleek black car, Quinn turned toward Toby, who was still holding the extra ketchup packet. "Dad?" "Yeah, is she a princess or something?" Quinn chuckled. "Something like that, buddy." But what he didn't say, what he barely even let himself think, was that maybe, just maybe, he'd found something more than just a lost kid today. Maybe he'd found a beginning. Quinn stood in the middle of the apartment living room, balancing a toolbox on one hip and trying not to trip over the toy train tracks that stretched from the couch to the kitchenette. The light in the hallway had gone out 3 days ago, and the landlord hadn't returned his calls. Again. He tilted the lamp toward the ceiling and adjusted the bulb. Still nothing. "You gonna fix the sun next?" Toby asked from the couch, where he sat cross-legged with a battered comic book open in his lap. "If I could," Quinn muttered, "we'd never pay another electric bill again." Toby grinned. "Then we'll live in the Bahamas, right?" "Sure, right after I fix this light." He heard a knock at the door. Quinn set the lamp down and wiped his hands on his jeans. They hadn't ordered anything, and he wasn't expecting anyone. He opened the door cautiously. Palmer Tate stood there, wearing flats and holding a white paper bag that smelled suspiciously like real food. Her hair was pulled back in a braid that made her look younger, more casual but no less confident. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said. "You mentioned a second burger." Quinn blinked. "I didn't think you meant today." She held up the bag. "There's enough for both of you, and I brought chocolate milk." Toby was already on his feet, peering around Quinn's legs like a curious chipmunk. "Is it the kind with the bendy straw?" Palmer knelt down. "The very one." Quinn stepped aside. "Come in." She walked inside, her eyes flicking briefly across the cramped space. She didn't comment on the peeling linoleum or the cracked window pane, but he saw the way she took it all in. Still, she didn't flinch. Instead, she handed Toby the bag and followed Quinn into the kitchen area. "Hope you're okay with burgers again," she said. "I'm not exactly in a position to be picky," Quinn replied, setting 2 mismatched plates on the counter. "But I'm curious." "You usually deliver food in person." Palmer leaned against the counter. "No, but I figured if I sent someone else it wouldn't come with company." Quinn raised an eyebrow. "So this is a social call, I guess you could call it that." Toby tore into the bag like it was Christmas morning. Quinn poured the milk into 2 glasses and handed one to Palmer. "Don't take this the wrong way," he said, "but you seem like someone who doesn't have a lot of downtime." She took a sip. "I don't, but I wanted to see you again." That stopped him cold. She looked completely at ease in his kitchen, like she didn't notice the leaky faucet dripping behind her or the fact that one of the cabinet doors hung crooked on its hinges. "Why?" he asked. Palmer set her glass down. "Because you didn't look at me like I was made of glass. Or like I was some project you had to work your way around." "I don't really have time for people's facades," Quinn said, leaning on the edge of the counter. "It takes too much energy." "Exactly." She tilted her head. "So what do you do when you're not saving lost kids?" He let out a short laugh. "I do odd jobs, painting, repairs, whatever pays and doesn't break my back." Palmer's gaze didn't waver. "You used to do something else." He hesitated. "I did construction management before Toby's mom passed." After that, full-time gigs with long hours weren't an option. She nodded like she understood more than she was letting on. "You always wanted to be a CEO?" he asked. Palmer looked at her shoes. Not exactly. I inherited the company, well, fought to keep it technically. My father made me prove I could run it before handing over the reins. Sounds like he wasn't the sentimental type. He believed in performance, not potential. Quinn studied her. You seem like someone who doesn't let people push her around. Palmer smiled faintly. I learned early that if I didn't speak up, someone else would speak for me. Toby appeared between them, holding out a half-eaten fry. Want one? Palmer accepted it with a grateful nod. Best offer I've had all day. They all sat at the tiny kitchen table, legs bumping beneath it. Palmer asked Toby about his favorite books, and he launched into a passionate explanation about a superhero who could breathe underwater and talk to crabs. She listened like it was the most fascinating thing she'd ever heard. After dinner, Palmer helped clear the plates without being asked. She rinsed them in the sink, careful not to splash water onto her blouse. Quinn watched her work, a strange warmth building in his chest. "You're not what I expected," he said. "Neither are you," she replied without turning around. He walked over and gently took the dish from her hand. "You really don't have to do this." "I want to," she said simply. Toby yawned from the couch. Quinn checked the clock. It was later than he thought. "I should get him ready for bed." Palmer retrieved her coat from the chair. "I'll get going." He walked her to the door. "Thanks for dinner." "And the company." As she stepped into the hallway, she turned to face him. "I meant what I said," she said quietly. "I don't care about backgrounds or bank accounts." Quinn held her gaze. "Then what do you care about?" She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned in and kissed his cheek just once, soft and brief, and walked down the hall without looking back. Quinn stood in the doorway long after she was gone, his fingers brushing the place her lips had touched. Behind him, Toby mumbled sleepily, "Are we gonna see the chocolate milk lady again?" Quinn smiled to himself. "Yeah, buddy," he said. "I think we will." The last thing Quinn expected to see when he walked into the community center on Saturday morning was Palmer Tate standing beside a folding table, sleeves rolled up, setting out crayons and construction paper like she belonged there. He froze in the doorway, one hand still on Toby's backpack strap. Palmer looked up and gave him a look that wasn't casual, it was intentional. "You're late," she called, like this was something they did every weekend. Toby ran ahead, unbothered, joining a group of kids at the far end of the room who were busy turning cardboard boxes into rocket ships. Quinn walked over slowly. "You're volunteering." "I called the director yesterday," she said. "Told her I wanted to help with the kids' art workshop." "Apparently they're short-staffed," he crossed his arms. "And that had nothing to do with me mentioning we come here on Saturdays." Her expression didn't shift. "Maybe I wanted to see what kind of rocket ships your son builds." He studied her. The last time they spoke, she'd left his apartment with a kiss on the cheek and a look that had stayed in his mind for days. Now she was wiping glue off her hands and acting like she'd been part of this world all along. "I didn't expect you to show up here," he admitted. "I didn't expect to want to," she said simply. Someone called her name from the other side of the room, a teenage girl with a paint-splattered apron and a slightly panicked look. Palmer excused herself and crossed the space quickly, crouching beside the girl to help with a spilled paint tray. Quinn watched her, arms still folded. She didn't flinch when a glob of green landed on her blouse. She didn't bark orders or delegate. She just grabbed a towel and cleaned it up. He turned toward the coffee table in the back corner, poured himself a cup from the battered carafe, and leaned against the wall. It was surreal watching someone who belonged in glossy boardrooms kneel in a gymnasium with dried macaroni stuck to the floor. Toby appeared at his side, holding up a jagged paper crown. "Can I give this to Palmer? She might be busy," Quinn said. Toby shook his head. "She helped me cut it. She said I should be proud of it." Quinn raised an eyebrow. "She said that?" "Yeah." "And that being a king doesn't mean bossing people. It means taking care of them first." Quinn looked over at Palmer again. Later, after the last of the glitter had been swept up and the kids had scattered into parental arms, Palmer sat on the edge of the stage, her heels kicked off beside her. Quinn walked over and handed her a bottle of water. "You've got paint on your cheek." She reached up to wipe it, but missed. He leaned in, brushed it off with his thumb. Her breath caught slightly, not enough to be obvious, but enough for him to notice. "You didn't have to do all that," he said quietly. "I wanted to see your world," she replied. Not just the part that fits between takeout containers and polite conversation. He sat beside her, the wood creaking beneath them. "You're not used to people telling you no, are you?" Palmer exhaled. "Not often, but I am used to people agreeing for the wrong reasons." Quinn tilted his head. "You think I'm doing that?" "No," she said. "That's exactly why I came." They sat in silence for a moment, the lingering scent of glue and washable markers hanging in the air. A janitor began stacking chairs across the gym. "You ever think about what you'd be doing if things had gone differently?" Palmer asked suddenly. "All the time," he said. "But I stopped letting it ruin the life I have." She looked at him. "That's hard." "Not as hard as pretending it doesn't matter." Palmer didn't respond right away. Then softly she said, "I was engaged once." Quinn turned to her, surprised. "He worked in finance. My father liked him, said he was smart and stable, but he never asked me what I wanted. Just expected me to fit in." "What happened?" "I called it off 2 weeks before the wedding. Didn't even pack my dress, I just left." He watched her carefully. "You regret it?" "No," she said, her voice firm. "I regret waiting so long." Toby ran up the aisle, clutching a juice box and a drawing of a three-eyed alien. "Palmer, look what I made." She took the picture like it was priceless. "That's amazing. What's his name?" "Zorgo. He eats sadness and turns it into ice cream." Palmer grinned. "That's a superpower we all need." Toby beamed and walked back toward the snack table. Quinn looked at her sideways. "You ever think about having kids?" "I used to. Then I thought I'd missed the window. But now, I don't know." He wasn't sure what to say to that. Not because he didn't have feelings, he did, but because they came too fast, too sharp. A woman like her didn't belong in his world, and yet here she was, barefoot on a gym stage with dried glue on her sleeve. "You want to get out of here for a bit?" she asked suddenly. "Just us?" Quinn looked over at Toby. "I'd need someone to watch him." "I already asked. One of the workshop volunteers said she could keep him for an hour or two. She's certified, and I left my number." He narrowed his eyes. "You planned this?" "I hoped." He laughed under his breath. "Where are we going?" She stood, slipping her heels back on. "Some place with real coffee and no dried macaroni." He glanced back at Toby, who was happily showing off his alien to a group of toddlers. Then he stood and followed her out the door. They didn't say much in the car. She drove a luxury coupe that hugged the road like it was stitched into the pavement. The leather seats still held the faint scent of something expensive he couldn't name. She didn't blast music or fill the silence with small talk. She let it settle between them, unpressured. They ended up at a rooftop cafe he'd never even heard of. The kind of place with linen napkins and a view of the skyline that made the city look like a painting. She chose a table near the edge. "I come here when I need to think," she said, settling into her chair. "It reminds me there's more than boardrooms and bottom lines." Quinn sipped his coffee and leaned on the table. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," she said, repeating his earlier words with a small smile. He watched the wind tug at a strand of her hair. "You sure you're ready to be seen with someone like me in a place like this?" Palmer reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. "I'm not worried about what people see. I'm worried about what I miss if I don't look closely." He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The city stretched out below them, glittering and loud, but up there, it was quiet. And for the first time in a long time, he let himself wonder what it would feel like to have someone beside him for real, someone who didn't flinch at the mess or try to change him. Someone who already saw the man he was, not the one he used to be. Quinn stood beside Palmer in the entryway of the Tate & Co. Foundation Gala, his one decent blazer feeling tighter than he remembered. The marble floor beneath his feet gleamed like water, reflecting the golden chandeliers hanging above them. A string quartet played from a raised dais near the far wall, and every guest looked like they'd stepped out of a fashion campaign. He adjusted his collar, resisting the urge to ask if he had something on his face. Palmer turned toward him, her eyes scanning the crowd with practiced ease. "You okay?" "I haven't been in a room like this since my cousin's wedding," he muttered. "And that was in a barn." She smiled without looking at him. "You belong here more than most of them." He looked around at the tuxedos, custom gowns, and laughter that rang a little too sharp. "I'm not sure they'd agree." "I didn't bring you for them," she said simply. "I brought you for me." He didn't answer, but he stepped a little closer. Her perfume was different tonight, lighter, warmer. something expensive he couldn't name, but it clung to the air like a memory waiting to happen. Across the room, a man with salt and pepper hair approached them, flanked by a woman in a floor-length emerald gown. Palmer straightened slightly. "Palmer," the man said, voice smooth, "I've been looking for you. You've been dodging board meetings again." "I've been busy," she replied coolly. "This is Quinn Foster. Quinn, this is Lawrence Beckett. He's on the Foundation's board." Lawrence extended a hand. "Pleasure." Quinn accepted it, his grip firm, likewise. "And what do you do?" Lawrence asked, tone casual but calculated. "I work with my hands," Quinn said. "Fix things. Build what people need." Lawrence's eyebrows lifted just slightly. "Interesting." Palmer interjected before the moment stretched too far. "Quinn saved my son's life." Lawrence's face shifted. "Ah, well, then we're in your debt." Quinn gave a curt nod. "No debt. Just doing what any decent person would have." Palmer steered him away before the conversation could get heavier. Once they reached the edge of the ballroom, she let out a breath. "Sorry about that. Lawrence measures people by their bank accounts." "Then I'm not even on his radar," Quinn said flatly. She turned to him. "You were calm, direct. That's more than most people manage around him." He glanced at her. "You sure you want someone like me at your side in this world?" She didn't answer right away. Then she reached for his hand. "I'm not asking you to fit into this world. I'm asking you to walk beside me in it." He stared at her, unsure how she kept knocking the wind out of him without ever raising her voice. "Why me?" he asked, genuinely. "You could be with anyone in this room." Palmer's jaw tightened. "Because no one in this room ever looked at me like I was enough. They look at me and see what they can take. You look at me and see what I'm trying to give." He couldn't speak, not right away. Then quietly, "I didn't come here to impress anyone." "You don't have to." Before he could respond, a server approached with a tray of champagne flutes. Quinn declined, but Palmer took one and handed it to him. "Just hold it," she said with a teasing glint in her eye. "It helps people relax if they think you're drinking." He laughed softly. "You're good at this. I've had a lot of practice pretending I'm comfortable." That sentence hit harder than he expected. They stood near the balcony doors where the noise of the gala softened. When Palmer stepped outside into the cool air, Quinn followed. The city stretched out before them, glittering under the dark velvet sky. She wrapped her arms around herself. "You cold?" he asked. "A little." He slipped off his blazer and draped it over her shoulders without hesitation. She looked down at the fabric, then up at him. "You do that a lot," she said. "What?" "Give without waiting to be asked." He leaned against the railing. "When you've had to go without, you notice when someone else is close to the edge." Palmer was quiet for a moment. Then softly, "I don't want to be alone at the top of everything." "You're not," he said. "Not anymore." She turned toward him, her eyes searching his. "There's something I want to ask you." "All right. It's going to sound fast, maybe impulsive. But I've thought about it every day since I left your apartment." He stilled. "Okay. I want you to come work with me, not in some office. I'm building a new initiative, grants for community repairs, housing rehabs, schools that need structural help. I need someone who understands what people actually need, someone who doesn't guess from spreadsheets." He blinked. "You want me to run it. I want you to design it, build the team, decide where the money goes. I'll back it, but it'll have your name on it." She stepped closer. "It's yours if you want it." He looked out over the city again. "That's not a small offer." "No," she said. "It's not, but neither was giving me my son back." He turned to her. "You trust me with this. I trust you with more than this." She wasn't talking about grants anymore, and he knew it. "I'll need time," he said. "Not because I don't want it, but because I want to do it right." Palmer nodded. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." They stood in silence, the city humming below them. Later, when the gala ended and she walked him and Toby out to her car, she paused before opening the door. "Can I show you something?" she asked. Now she nodded. He followed her down a quiet side street, past the glowing marquee of the Opera House, until they reached a corner lot surrounded by fencing. Palmer unlocked the gate and stepped inside. The lot was empty, save for a foundation outline in the dirt and a sign that read, "Future site of Tate and Foster Community Center." Quinn froze. "You all ready?" "I bought the lot last month," she said. "I was going to surprise you, but tonight felt right." He walked forward slowly, taking in the space. I wanted to name it after the people who started it, she said. And after the night, everything changed. He turned to her. I'm in love with you, she said quietly. And I want a life with you not because it's simple, but because it's real. He didn't say anything. He just crossed the space between them, cupped her face in both hands, and kissed her like the answer had been waiting on his tongue for weeks. When they pulled apart, she leaned her forehead against his. Is that a yes? He smiled, heart pounding. It's a yes. Behind them, the city kept moving, but in that corner of the world, something had settled, something permanent. Later that year, the community center opened with a ribbon-cutting ceremony attended by hundreds. Palmer stood at Quinn's side, her hand in his, while Toby clung to her other one, wearing a tiny suit and a crown made out of foam. They didn't need to say it aloud. The life they'd built wasn't just love, it was earned, brick by brick, and it was theirs. All of it. The sun filtered through the tall windows of the new Tate and Foster Community Center, casting warm light over the polished floors and fresh paint. Quinn stood in the main hall, watching as a group of teens assembled a bookshelf without instructions. He didn't interfere. They were figuring it out, arguing over shelf height and screw placement with the kind of passionate stubbornness he remembered having at their age. He walked into the side office where Palmer was reviewing a blueprint on the desk, her heels kicked off beside her chair. Her hair was pulled into a low knot, a pencil tucked behind one ear. She glanced up when he entered. I was wondering where you disappeared to, she said. You missed the fruit basket delivery. An anonymous donor sent organic pears and 3 jars of fig jam. Let me guess, Lawrence Beckett trying to stay on your good side. Very possible. Though I'm still suspicious of anyone who sends jam with a wax seal. Quinn leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You always this calm on inspection day? Her pencil stilled. No. But I've already double-checked everything, and if the fire marshal wants to argue about the width of the stair railings again, I'll hand him a wrench. He chuckled, then walked over, resting his hand lightly on her shoulder. You've built something good here. We built it, she corrected. They didn't need to say more. The last few months had been a whirlwind of planning, permits, and late nights filled with takeout and blueprints. Toby had taken to the construction site like it was his personal kingdom, learning how to measure lumber and negotiate snack trades with the crew. Palmer closed the folder and turned to face him. Are you ready for tonight? I wore a button-down shirt and everything, he teased. I think that counts as ready, she gave him a look. You're giving the speech, he froze. That wasn't the deal. You're the face of the initiative. People need to hear from you, not just me. I build things, Palmer. I don't charm donors. You don't need to charm anyone. Just tell the truth. That's what you've always done. He exhaled slowly. You're not even nervous. I'm terrified, she admitted. But I'm also standing next to the only man who's ever made me feel like I didn't have to do everything alone. Quinn looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once. All right, I'll do it. That night, the community center buzzed with life. Local families, business leaders, city council members all mingling beneath the soft glow of string lights. The gym had been transformed with folding chairs, white linens, and centerpieces made by the kids during their after-school program. Toby sat near the front, dressed in a navy vest and clip-on tie, swinging his legs as he sipped from a juice box. Palmer stood backstage, adjusting the microphone on the podium. She wore a deep sapphire dress that caught the light each time she moved. Quinn stepped beside her, straightening his collar. You look like you've done this 100 times, he murmured. I haven't, she said. But I know who I'm doing it with. The MC introduced them, and Palmer walked out first, delivering a concise and heartfelt speech that had the room leaning in. When it was Quinn's turn, he stepped up to the mic, cleared his throat, and looked out at the sea of faces. I'm not a public speaker, he began. I'm not a CEO or a politician. I'm a builder, a father, a man who's made mistakes and learned to stand back up. He paused, letting his voice settle. I didn't expect to be here. I didn't expect to fall in love with a woman who lives in a world I thought I'd never touch. But what I've learned is that it's not about where you came from. It's about what you choose to build together. He glanced toward Palmer. Her eyes glistened, but her smile was steady. This building isn't just walls and floors. It's a promise that no matter what you've lost, there's still something worth creating. that people matter more than profits. That real love is about showing up day after day. He looked down at Toby, who raised his juice box in the air with a proud grin. That's all I've got, Quinn finished. Thanks for being part of something that matters. The applause was loud, but it was Palmer's hand slipping into his afterward that made his chest feel like it might burst. Later, after the crowd had drifted home and the lights had dimmed, Palmer and Quinn stood alone in the now quiet hall. Toby had fallen asleep in a beanbag chair, his paper crown tilted sideways on his head. Palmer leaned into Quinn's side. I've been thinking, that's dangerous. She elbowed him gently. I want to take a real vacation, just us, somewhere quiet, mountains maybe, no phones. No schedules, sounds like heaven. And after that, she continued, I want to get married. Quinn blinked. That wasn't on the itinerary for tonight. I know, she said, but I've never been more certain of anything. I want a life with you, not just this building or this moment. I want it all. He looked down at her, at the woman who had walked into his world like a lightning storm and turned the rubble into something new. Then let's build that too. They didn't wait long. 2 months later, they stood beneath a canopy of trees in the Berkshires, surrounded by the people who had become their second family. Toby served as best man, holding the rings like they were made of gold and wonder. Palmer wore a dress with no train and bare feet, her hair down, her eyes fixed on Quinn like he was the only thing that had ever made sense. I promise to never ask you to be anything other than exactly who you are, she said, voice strong. And to love you even when we're covered in paint and arguing about where the light switches should go. I promise to keep building with you, Quinn replied, even when the blueprint changes. They kissed beneath the trees, laughter and cheers echoing through the clearing. That night, in a small cabin with creaky floors and a wood-burning stove, Palmer curled against Quinn beneath a threadbare quilt, her hand resting over his heart. We've come a long way, she whispered. We're just getting started, he said, brushing a kiss against her forehead. She fell asleep with a smile, and he stayed awake a little longer, listening to the quiet rustle of wind through the trees, the soft breath of the woman beside him, and the knowledge that for the first time in his life he had everything he needed, a home, a family, and a love that had rebuilt him from the inside out.